Hey mini enthusiasts, how are you doing? Welcome back. I hope you're having a great day. This is part 48 of the Project ERA build, and it's the penultimate episode. So part 49 will be the final episode, followed possibly by a live Q&A with Mark, and that will be going out next week, so a week after this video. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that bell notification. So this week's episode, it's the Rolling Road tune. It's something I've really been looking forward to, really excited, just to see what power that engine could make. It was my recommendation to Mark that it went to Ian Hargreaves at Avonbar because I knew he was an expert engine builder, knew he knew turbo cars very well, and I thought it'd be great for the build. So yeah, I have high expectations, and so did Mark. So this is a bit of a roller coaster episode. So there's ups and there's downs, but by the end of this video, we'll see the full potential of that engine. But there was a bit of twist in the tail before we get there, which I'll explain in a moment. So we're having the ERA rolling roaded now because it's obviously freshly built, it's a new setup, and you want to make sure that the fueling is correct and the ignition timing is correct, because if you get it wrong and you drive it around with it lean, it can damage the engine. So it's worth getting it set up, and it would be also very interesting to see what the power potential of the ERA engine is. So as standard, they were around about 96 brake horsepower. This engine has been modified by Ian Hargreaves at Avonbar. It's not all out built for power, it's built for drivability, but we were expecting quite an increase on the standard power output of the ERA. So Mark got it booked in for the rolling road session. I went down and I joined Mark down there, and when we got there it kind of went downhill a little bit. It really didn't start off very well. So Mark arrived with his dad, I arrived in PL, so there were three of us there. So before we'd got there, actually, Mark had already spoke to the owner and asked if they were okay for the rolling road session to be filmed, to be posted on the channel on YouTube, and they were absolutely fine with that. So when we arrived, got out the car, the guy that was going to do the tuning come out, introduced himself, and the first thing he said was a bit of a sarcastic comment, and he turned around and said, "Is this a family outing?" or something along those lines, making reference to there being three of us there, which I thought was a bit odd, seemed a little bit grumpy. It was mid-morning, so fair enough. And a few seconds later, he then made a comment about the body kit on the car. I think he said, "I hope that body kit comes off." And of course, it doesn't, or not very easily anyway. And he was making reference to how low it was at the front, which I can understand. But as I say, he did come across as being quite grumpy. Mark then drove the ERA into the dyno booth, was chatting to the guy, really didn't seem very happy about having to rolling road the ERA, seemed to be picking up on everything with it, and within a few seconds he noticed a camera in Mark's hand, and he said, "I hope you're not doing what I think you're going to do." And Mark said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, I'm not being filmed." So Mark explained that he'd already made contact, he'd already been given permission, but the guy was adamant he didn't want to be filmed. So I kind of stepped in. I said, "Well, look, do you mind if we film the car, but I'll make sure I cut you out the footage," which is what he agreed to do, but he was pretty grumpy about it anyway. Anyway, there's a bit more to in and throwing, and I'm not going to name the place we took it to because Mark's still in contact with the owner at the moment, and until they come back with a response to what happened and the outcome of the rolling road and what happened later on, I don't know what their position is. So I don't want to, mention them without giving them a chance to respond to Mark. But I'm just going to go through the facts of what was said, what happened, what the outcome was. So as I say, the guy tuning the car was clearly very grumpy. At that point, I sort of turned around to Mark and I said, "You've got far more patience than I have. Honestly, if it was me, I would have got back in the car. I would have reversed it off the rolling road. I wouldn't have said a thing. I would have just driven it back home. I then would have called the garage and said, 'Look, I'm really sorry. I'm not letting someone with that sort of attitude work on my pride and joy.' They're about to rev the car to its limits. They're about to do some tuning on the car. And generally, if they've got a bad attitude, I wouldn't want them working on my car. anyway, Mark is far more patient than I, so we stuck at it anyway, and we were there for 3 hours, so quite a long time. They'd done various things on the car. Now, I must acknowledge, they did come out at one point and said they didn't have the correct needle for the car. They had a few, but they didn't have exactly the right one, and they gave the choice of they could have a go at profiling the needle, or they could order some needles in to try them at a later date. Well, obviously Mark's quite keen to get the car done, and my thinking is if they're going to profile the needle, they're going to take some metal off, and they'd already explained that it was running too lean. So the worst they could do was make it run richer, which would be safer. So anyway, they had a go at profiling the needle. They managed to do it. They managed to get the mixture running rich enough. Yeah, and they got a power figure output on it, which was, all I can say, for me, extremely disappointing. I've driven this car before it went on the rolling road, and without blowing my own trumpet, I've owned 2 ERAs before. I've owned both tuned ERAs that have been on the rollers. I know how much power they had. Mark's ERA is much quicker. I had Vinny for 8 years, which was a car with 100 brake horsepower, and the ERA was much, much faster. And I've also got my Cooper Sport 5, which is 85 brake horsepower, there or thereabouts, and the ERA is much, much faster. So I had quite high expectations. As I say, I've driven it before and it drove very well and is a very, very quick car. So the last thing I was expecting them to do was to come back with a figure of under 96 brake horsepower, which is standard. The rest, I realise I've waffled on for a long time, but I hope it's useful background. I'm going to pass over to Mark. I'll let Mark give the power figure and explain what happened afterwards.
Right, so I'm not sure whether Keith's going to put it on or not, but we had the dyno yesterday. No, we had the dyno Wednesday, not yesterday, day before. Sorry, not dyno, rolling road. And so when I drove the car up there, it was running almost perfect. Very good boost, very good speed in all the rev range, but it needed fine tuning. So we took it up there, they put it on the rollers and adjusted this, adjusted that, did a power run, got 87 brake horsepower, which when it came out with the results, I was a bit shocked really. 87 brake horsepower on a now 1310 turboed Mini A series is pretty poor really. We were expecting well over 100, and he reckons there was another 10 in it when it goes back after 1,000 miles for another rolling road. So that was that. So I obviously drove it out. Didn't seem right. didn't seem to want to sort of hold tick over that well. As soon as you pulled away, it bogged down. Needed like 2,500 revs just to pull away. And yeah, so I drove it home, all through the gears. Anything below 2,500 revs, just, it was in Keith's terms, it was flat. For me, it's bogging down, but yeah, so it's flat. Completely different car to drive. It was awful compared to driving up there. It was just awful. So got it back here. Keith had a drive in it. Said the same. You know how a car can go to a rolling road and come back worse than. Okay, that might be the oil babe. I can just put this in. Yeah, I just, you know, how can a car go to a rolling road, come out running worse than what it went in? So I got it back here. I've also got I had a major leak, oil leak from the rod selector oil seal. I've replaced it twice. I put the aluminium bush in, and I've replaced, I put 3 other oil seals in, and it was still really badly leaking out. Pretty much, I'd say, a litre overnight. So I've got bolt off the ramp, got this on there, dropped the oil again, and taken the oil seal out, the aluminium bush, taken a few other, because I've noticed a few other little oil leaks, just various areas. So what I did, I've changed the oil, taken the oil seal out and the alloy bush. I took off the oil feeds, the oil temp, oil switch, and remade all them in. And I've put, instead of putting the alloy bush in and an oil seal, I've put 2 oil seals in. I've literally just started filling it up with oil now. So far, so good, but obviously I haven't run it yet. Obviously when it's been running and it's hot, it's running out like it's going out of fashion. I've never seen oil leak so fast. So yeah, I've just started putting the oil in. I'm going to take the plugs off, crank it over just to get the oil around the engine, and fingers crossed. So other things I've had issues with, I've obviously got a atmospheric dump valve on this. As childish as it is, I like the sound of the hiss sound as it dumps. So I obviously put a new one on, and it still wasn't doing what it's supposed to do. It was just kind of hissing third and fourth at relatively high revs, and we couldn't work out why. So I'll just show you what we did initially. So originally on this, before the engine and carb went up to Ian, there's a sandwich plate in there, and it had a takeoff on it, like a vacuum takeoff, and this vacuum pipe from the dump valve went onto that. It came back, it didn't have that on, and this one hasn't got it on either. So what we did, we teed, and initially we teed into this pipe, and that didn't do anything, didn't make it any good. That's also a vacuum pipe. And then we teed into the vacuum here, where the boost vacuum is, and that wasn't, we couldn't work it out why that wasn't working. So we were a bit baffled, and then Wednesday evening I did speak to Keith about it. We had a think about it, and so we wasn't sure whether if we took the vacuum from the Dizzy, which goes onto the back of this pipe here, whether if we teed into that, whether that would make a difference. Keith didn't seem to think it would make any difference, any different to the other two vacuums. So I have tried that, changed that round, and took it for a run Wednesday night, and the dump valve is working as it should now. What I actually did whilst before I took it out, because it was running so badly, I did a quarter turn in on the mixture screw and just turned the idle up slightly. It sounded better already, and then when I took it out, just pulling out the garage, instantly it was better. So drove it up the road, power's back. It's still bogging, it's still a little bit flat at low end, but it's much better, almost on par to what it was before it went up to the rolling road. So once I've got it running again, Keith's coming down with Alex Toon, so we're just gonna have a look at the timing, do some adjustments on the mixture again, and try and get it back to where it was all better. But it was very disappointing. 330 quid I paid for basically 3 hours of rolling road, and I'm having to tune it myself. And I'm a builder. I'm not a mechanic. So yeah, that's very disappointing. I don't know whether they didn't really understand turbo cars. They were an historic garage, so that's why I took it to them, because they seem to do a huge range of cars. So yeah, not happy, and hopefully we can resolve it ourselves. I will get it roaded again, but obviously I want to find someone that actually knows what they're doing, and can give me some accurate dyno readings as well, because 87 brake horsepower is not what this engine does, you know, just by driving it. I've got the Cooper S, which has got a Swift Tune engine in it. SW5 cam, it's only a 1275. That was dynoed at 105 brake horsepower. And this is much quicker than that. I mean, that's a quick car, but this is much quicker. So there's no way this has got 87 brake horsepower. It's just ridiculous. I don't even know why he thinks that a 1310 turboed mini engine would produce something so low. So yeah, not happy. So other things I've done. You notice the rocker cover has changed. So I had the red one on there, which I sprayed, which I quite liked. Well, 50-50, I suppose. But I just use normal car spray paint, and I noticed, because of the intense heat that happens under here, the paint was starting to crackle and stuff. So I've bought a new alloy polished rocker cover and put that on. So yeah, I think I'm just going to stick with that now. But the heat under this engine under this bonnet is unbelievable. I never really noticed it before, but it's just, I suppose I should get a gauge on it, but it's so hot, it's unreal. I've also stuck these back on with these three with some high temp contact adhesive. It goes up to 120 degrees. So hopefully that won't come off, but we'll see after the next run.
See what's going on.
It's Alex Toon, the original Classic Mini Workshop #1 fan. So shortly after Mark had the rolling road, I went down there to have a look what was going on and see why it was so flat and difficult to start. And it was blatantly obvious straight away. We checked the ignition timing and they'd set the ignition timing to 4 degrees after top dead centre, which just makes no sense at all. Especially on a turbo car, the timing should be set to before top dead centre, and depending on the tune, I guess anywhere between sort of 8 to 10 degrees, maybe a little bit more, if you can get away with it without it detonating. The more ignition advance you can get, the more power you get out the engine. So we knocked it back to, I think, it was probably 10 degrees, drove it, and all the power was restored. It was driving like it was again before the rolling road, plenty of power. I don't understand what they've done there. I can only imagine maybe they set the timing under full load and didn't check the base setting timing again. I don't know. I don't understand it. I've never seen a car set up with the ignition timing after top dead centre. Either way, Mark booked it in for a second rolling road, and I think you'll see in a moment the results were impressive.